The CNN studio lights blazed hot as Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat across from Arizona's Kari Lake, both women locked in what was supposed to be a civilized political debate about immigration policy and border security. The temperature in the studio seemed to rise with each passing minute as the two political powerhouses sparred over legislation, statistics, and voter concerns. But what happened in the next 30 seconds would shatter every rule of political discourse and leave millions of viewers absolutely stunned. Lake, the former Fox 10 Phoenix news anchor turned Trump-endorsed politician, had been steadily losing ground in the debate. For the past 20 minutes she had thrown her usual arsenal of talking points at Crockett, claims about border chaos, accusations of Democratic weakness, and attacks on Biden administration policies. But none of it was sticking. Her carefully rehearsed sound bites that usually dominated social media weren't landing with the studio audience, and Crockett's razor-sharp policy knowledge and command of actual legislative details was making Lake look increasingly unprepared and desperate. The frustration was written all over Lake's face. Her usual confident smirk had faded as Crockett systematically dismantled her arguments with actual facts, budget numbers, and real-world policy outcomes. Lake's media training had prepared her for friendly Fox News interviews and supportive rally crowds, but she was clearly struggling against an opponent who had done her homework and came armed with receipts. That's when Lake made a decision that would haunt her political career forever. "You know what, Jasmine?" Lake said, her voice dripping with condescension as she leaned forward with a cruel smile. "Maybe if you spent less time on your appearance and more time actually reading the bills you vote on, Texas might have better representation." Even the camera operators stopped moving, their professional instincts telling them they were witnessing something unprecedented. The makeup artists in the green room paused their work on other guests, drawn to the monitors by the sudden tension crackling through the air. What Lake had just done was cross a line that no serious politician crosses on national television. She had just insulted a black congresswoman's appearance on live TV, apparently thinking her media experience and Trump endorsement would protect her from any serious consequences. In that moment of stunned silence, seasoned political observers in the studio audience exchanged knowing glances. They had seen countless political debates, heated exchanges, and even personal attacks, but this felt different. This wasn't just political theater or strategic positioning. This was a fundamental miscalculation that could end careers and reshape narrative. Some veteran journalists in the press section were already reaching for their phones, sensing that they were about to witness either a complete political meltdown or the birth of a legendary comeback moment. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't about to let this slide. What she said next would not only destroy Lake's reputation, but also create one of the most viral political moments of the year, the kind that gets studied in political science classes and communications seminars for decades to come. Before we dive into how Crockett systematically dismantled Lake piece by piece, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this showdown is about to get incredibly intense, and you won't want to miss a single devastating detail. The countdown had begun, and Kari Lake had absolutely no idea she was about to face the political fight of her life against someone who had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of moment. To understand why this confrontation was so explosive, you need to know exactly who these two women are and what brought them to this moment. A brilliant civil rights attorney from Dallas, she earned her law degree from the University of Houston Law Center, where she graduated magna cum laude and served as editor of the Law Review. Before entering politics, she built her reputation as a tenacious advocate, defending voting rights cases that reached the state Supreme Court and fighting high-profile police brutality cases that garnered national attention. When she won her congressional seat in 2022, defeating a well-funded Republican incumbent, she became one of the youngest black women ever elected to represent Texas in the House of Representatives. Crockett didn't come from political royalty or family wealth, a fact that shapes everything about how she approaches politics. She grew up in a working-class family in St. Louis, where her mother worked as a nurse and her father drove trucks to support the family. She worked multiple jobs to pay her way through undergraduate studies at Rhodes College, then took out significant student loans to attend law school. After graduation, she spent years in the legal trenches fighting for ordinary people who couldn't afford high-powered attorneys, often taking cases pro bono when justice demanded it. Her colleagues in both the legal profession and Congress describe her as whip-smart, thoroughly prepared, and absolutely fearless when it comes to calling out injustice, regardless of who's responsible. In Congress, she's become known for her razor-sharp questioning during committee hearings, her ability to break down complex legal issues in ways that regular people can understand, and her talent for exposing hypocrisy with surgical precision. During her first year in office, she authored or co-sponsored over 40 pieces of legislation, ranging from voting rights protections, to healthcare expansion, to criminal justice reform. Her committee work has been particularly impressive. She sits on the House Judiciary Committee, where her legal background allows her to dissect witnesses with the skill of a seasoned prosecutor. She's also become a social media sensation, with her clips from congressional hearings regularly going viral for their clarity, fire, and devastating effectiveness against unprepared witnesses. What many people don't realize is that Crockett's communication style was honed, not just in courtrooms, but in some of the most hostile environments imaginable. She's argued cases before all-white juries in conservative Texas counties, faced down intimidation tactics from opposing counsel, and stood up to judges who clearly didn't want to hear what she had to say. This background gave her an almost supernatural ability to remain calm under pressure, while systematically destroying her opponent's argument. Her law school professors still talk about her legendary moot court performances, where she would take apart seasoned attorneys with nothing but preparation and intellectual precision. For over 2 decades, she was the trusted face of Phoenix television news, building a career as a polished, professional anchor who delivered breaking news with authority and charm. She anchored morning shows, evening broadcasts, and special coverage that made her a household name across Arizona. Her journalism career was marked by major story coverage, community involvement, and the kind of local celebrity status that opens doors in politics. But in 2021, she shocked the Arizona media landscape by abruptly leaving journalism to dive headfirst into Trump-style confrontational politics. Lake quickly became one of Trump's most vocal and aggressive supporters, fully embracing election denial claims and positioning herself as a fierce warrior against the fake news media. Ironically, the very industry that had made her famous and financially successful for decades. She ran for Arizona governor in 2022, losing a close race to Democrat Katie Hobbs, but absolutely refusing to concede, claiming without any credible evidence that the election was stolen through a complex conspiracy involving voting machines, poll workers, and election officials. Her political brand is built on being provocative and confrontational, never backing down from a fight, and always doubling down when challenged. She's mastered the art of the inflammatory soundbite, and isn't afraid to say things that other politicians won't, often pushing boundaries that would end other people's careers. Her supporters love her for telling it like it is and fighting the establishment, while her critics see her as a dangerous demagogue who spreads conspiracy theories and undermines democratic institutions. Lake's media background gives her a huge advantage in television appearances, or so she thought. She knows exactly how to work cameras, control timing, position herself for the best angles, and deliver lines that will get attention and generate clips for social media. She understands lighting, pacing, and the rhythm of television in ways that most politicians never master. She's been preparing for moments like this her entire adult life, having spent decades in front of cameras and thinking she could outmaneuver any opponent in a televised setting. What Lake didn't understand, however, was that all her media training had prepared her for friendly interviews and supportive environments, not for intellectual combat with someone who had spent years dismantling arguments in hostile courtrooms. Her confidence in her television skills had made her overconfident about her ability to handle any opponent, regardless of their actual qualifications or preparation level. This CNN debate wasn't happening in a vacuum. Both women were representing much more than their own political career. Crockett embodied the new generation of diverse Democratic leadership, young, brilliant, and unafraid to challenge the old ways of doing things. Lake represented the Trump movement's attempt to mainstream previously unacceptable political behavior. The topic they were supposed to be debating, border security and immigration policy, had become one of the most toxic issues in American politics. Republicans like Lake had been using increasingly harsh rhetoric to describe Democratic positions, while Democrats like Crockett were pushing back against what they saw as racist dog whistles and fear-mongering. But this debate had already moved beyond policy. Personal attacks, interruptions, and heated exchanges had been building for 20 minutes. The moderator had lost control multiple times. Both women were clearly frustrated, and the tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lake's insult about Crockett's appearance wasn't just a personal attack, It was the kind of coded language that black women in politics face constantly. The suggestion that a highly accomplished attorney and congresswoman was somehow vain or unprofessional struck at stereotypes that have been used to diminish black women's achievements for generations. What Lake didn't realize was that she had just given Crockett the perfect opening to showcase exactly why she had become such a formidable political force. The congresswoman from Texas was about to remind everyone why you should never underestimate a civil rights lawyer who spent her career fighting bullies. The moment after Lake's insult landed, the energy in the CNN studio shifted completely. You could literally feel the temperature change as producers in the control room frantically adjusted camera angles to capture every micro-expression. Jasmine Crockett's face didn't change immediately. She had the poker face of someone who'd spent years in courtrooms, dealing with hostile opposing counsel, trying every dirty trick in the book. But her eyes narrowed slightly, and anyone who knew her well would have recognized that look. It was the same expression she got right before demolishing a witness who had just lied under oath. The calm before an intellectual storm that would leave her opponent's credibility in ruin. Lake, meanwhile, sat back in her chair with a satisfied smirk, clearly believing she had just landed a devastating blow that would throw her opponent off balance. Her media training had taught her that personal attacks often rattled opponents and threw them off their game, forcing them into emotional responses that made them look unprofessional and unprepared. She probably expected Crockett to get flustered, maybe fire back with an emotional response that would make her look defensive and give Lake the upper hand she desperately needed to regain control of this debate. The CNN moderator, Anderson Cooper, immediately tried to regain control. "Let's please keep this focused on the issues," he said, his voice tight with barely concealed frustration. This was supposed to be a serious policy debate, not a cage match. But Lake wasn't done. Having tasted blood in the water, she decided to double down on her attack strategy. "I mean, seriously," Lake continued, her voice taking on that fake sweet tone that every woman recognizes as pure poison. "When I was in journalism, we focused on substance over style. Maybe that's what's wrong with Congress today, too much focus on looking good for the cameras instead of actually doing the work." The audience in the studio, a carefully selected mix of political insiders, journalists, and activists, began to murmur. Even in the highly polarized world of modern politics, Lake's comments felt like they had crossed a significant line. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Crockett finally spoke, her voice calm and measured in a way that immediately commanded attention. "Kari, I want to make sure I understand what you just said. Are you suggesting that my appearance somehow affects my ability to represent the people of Texas?" Lake's smirk widened. She thought she was winning. "I'm just saying that maybe if elected officials spent more time reading legislation and less time on other things, the American people would be better served." "Other things," Crockett repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. "Could you be more specific about what other things you're referring to?" This was a classic lawyer's move, forcing the opponent to explicitly state what they were implying, making them own their words completely. Lake, despite her media experience, walked right into the trap. "Look, I think it's pretty obvious," Lake said, waving her hand dismissively. "When you spend that much time and money on your appearance, on your hair, your makeup, your clothes, it raises questions about priorities." The studio audience audibly gasped. Lake had just explicitly attacked a black congresswoman's appearance on national television, and she had doubled down when given a chance to back away. But she still didn't seem to grasp how badly she had miscalculated. Crockett nodded slowly, as if she was processing this information for the first time. "So you believe that my hair, my makeup, and my clothes indicate that I'm not focused on my legislative responsibility?" "I'm just saying what a lot of people are thinking," Lake replied, apparently believing she had the support of the audience. That's when Crockett's expression finally changed. The poker face disappeared, replaced by the kind of cold fury that had made her legendary in Texas courtroom. But when she spoke, her voice remained perfectly controlled. "Kari, I want to thank you for making something very clear to everyone watching tonight," Crockett said, her words measured and precise. "You've just demonstrated exactly the kind of disrespect that black women face every single day in professional settings." Lake's smirk began to fade as she realized the conversation had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated. Crockett continued, "You've decided that because I'm a black woman who takes care of her appearance, I must be less serious about my job. You've reduced my Harvard law degree, my years as a civil rights attorney, and my work in Congress to the way I look." "Now wait a minute," Lake tried to interrupt, but Crockett wasn't finished. "No, Kari, you wait a minute," Crockett said, her voice rising slightly but still maintaining complete control. You want to talk about priorities? Let's talk about priority. The entire studio was dead silent. Now, even the cameramen had stopped moving, sensing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Anderson Cooper sat transfixed, clearly recognizing that this had moved far beyond anything he could or should try to moderate. Crockett leaned forward, her gaze locked on Lake. My priority is representing 760,000 people in Texas who sent me to Congress to fight for them. My priority is the Voting Rights Act that I've worked on since before I was elected. My priority is making sure that working families can afford health care and that our children get a quality education. Lake tried to respond, but Crockett held up a hand. I'm not done, she said firmly. You want to know about my appearance? This hair that you seem so concerned about, these are my natural curls that I spent years learning to love, because people like you told me they weren't professional enough. This makeup, I wear it because I learned that if I don't, people will ask if I'm tired or sick, and then my appearance becomes the story instead of my work. The camera captured Lake's face as Crockett spoke, and viewers could see her realizing that she had made a serious mistake. The confident smirk was completely gone, replaced by the look of someone who knew they were in serious trouble. But Crockett was just getting started. What came next would not only destroy Lake's argument, but also create one of the most powerful moments in recent political television. And these clothes that concern you so much, Corey, Crockett said, gesturing to her sharp navy suit. I buy them because I learned that if I dress casually, people question my professionalism. If I dress too formally, people say I'm trying too hard. If I dress fashionably, people like you say I'm focused on the wrong things. The audience was completely captivated. This wasn't just a political response. It was a masterclass in how systemic racism and sexism work in professional settings. So let me ask you something, Crockett continued, her voice taking on the tone she used when cross-examining hostile witnesses. Have you ever criticized a male colleague for being well-dressed? Have you ever suggested that a man's appearance indicates he's not serious about his job? Lake opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She knew that any answer would make her look worse. I didn't think so, Crockett said. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what we call a double standard. The studio erupted in applause, but Crockett wasn't finished delivering her devastating response. The real knockout punch was still coming, and when it landed it would leave Lake completely speechless and create a moment that would be replayed millions of times across social media. What happened next would be remembered as one of the most devastating political takedowns in television history. Jasmine Crockett had spent the last few minutes systematically dismantling Kari Lake's attack, but she was about to deliver a response that would not only silence Lake, but also expose the fundamental hypocrisy of her entire political brand. Crockett stood up from her chair, a move that immediately commanded even more attention. In the world of television debates, standing up is a power move that signals you're about to deliver something important. The camera operators instinctively adjusted their shots to capture her full presence. Kari, Crockett said, her voice now carrying the full authority of someone who had commanded respect in courtrooms and congressional hearing rooms. Since you want to talk about appearances and priorities. Lake's face went pale. She suddenly realized that her media training hadn't prepared her for this, for facing someone who could research and prosecute a case in real time. Crockett reached into her folder and pulled out a tablet. This is interesting, she said, scrolling through what appeared to be notes. I've been looking at your social media posts from the last 6 months, and I noticed something fascinating. The entire studio leaned forward. Even Anderson Cooper, who had covered countless political moments, seemed to sense that he was witnessing something unprecedented. In the last 6 months alone, Crockett continued, you've posted 47 photos of yourself on Instagram. 47 professional headshots, glamour shots, photos of your outfits, photos of your hair and makeup team. You've literally posted more photos of your appearance than I have in my entire time in Congress. Lake tried to interrupt. That's completely different. Is it? Crockett cut her off. Because when I looked at your campaign expenses from your gubernatorial run, I found something really interesting. You spent $89,000 on hair, makeup and wardrobe. $89,000, Kari. The studio audience audibly gasped. The number was staggering, especially coming from someone who had just criticized another politician for caring about appearance. For context, Crockett continued, that's more than the median household income in Arizona. That's more than what many teachers make in a year. That's more than I've spent on my appearance in my entire political career. Lake was now visibly squirming in her seat, her face flushed red. She had walked into a trap that she had set for herself, and Crockett was systematically dismantling her piece by piece. But the Congresswoman wasn't done. She was about to deliver the kind of knockout punch that would be studied in law schools and political science classes for years to come. But here's what's really interesting, Kari, Crockett said, her voice taking on the tone of someone who was about to reveal the most damning evidence in a trial. I also looked at your voting record when you were involved in Arizona politics. Do you want to know what I found? Lake shook her head slightly, as if she could somehow stop what was coming. You voted against funding for education 3 different times. You opposed healthcare expansion that would have helped You supported tax cuts that primarily benefited wealthy developers, while arguing there wasn't enough money for infrastructure repairs. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. So let me get this straight, Crockett continued, now pacing slightly as she built to her crescendo. You spent $89,000 on your appearance, while arguing that there wasn't enough money to fund schools. You posted 47 photos of yourself on social media, while criticizing me for caring about my appearance. You voted against healthcare for hundreds of thousands of people, while dropping nearly 6 figures on hair and makeup. Lake tried desperately to respond. Those issues are completely separate, are they? Crockett fired back immediately. Because it seems to me like you've made a career out of looking good, while voting against policies that would actually help people look good, policies that would help them afford healthcare, education, and basic necessities. The devastating logic of Crockett's argument was undeniable. She had taken Lake's attack and flipped it completely, using Lake's own actions and priorities against her. And here's the real kicker, Kari, Crockett said, moving in for the final blow. While you were spending $89,000 to look good on camera, I was working with a bipartisan group of lawmakers to secure $2.3 billion in federal funding for Texas infrastructure projects. While you were posting glamour shots on Instagram, I was authoring legislation to expand healthcare access for 50,000 Texans. She paused, letting the contrast sink in. So when you ask me about priorities, here's what I want to know. What exactly have you accomplished for the people you claim to represent? What bills have you written? What problems have you solved? What communities have you helped? Lake opened her mouth, but no words came out. She had been completely outmaneuvered, and everyone in the studio could see it. Because from where I'm sitting, Crockett continued, it looks like the only person in this conversation who's actually focused on appearance over substance is you. The studio erupted in applause that lasted nearly 30 seconds. Even some of the production crew who were supposed to remain neutral were nodding in approval. Anderson Cooper sat back in his chair with a look that clearly said he had just witnessed a masterpiece of political combat. But Crockett still had one more moment that would cement this as an all-time political moment. You know what, Kari? She said, her voice now calm again but carrying unmistakable authority. I want to thank you for bringing up my appearance tonight, because you've given me the perfect opportunity to show the American people exactly what they should be looking for in their elected officials. She turned to address the camera directly, speaking to the millions of viewers watching at home. They should look for someone who shows up prepared, someone who does their homework, someone who can back up their arguments with facts and receipts, someone who fights for policies that help working families, not someone who spends more on their appearance than most families make in a year while voting against their interests. The camera captured Lake's face during this speech, and the image would become an instant meme. She looked completely defeated, slumped in her chair, all of her earlier confidence evaporate. And most importantly, Crockett concluded, they should look for someone who respects them enough not to resort to personal attacks when they can't win on the merits of their arguments. The applause was deafening. Even Anderson Cooper was clapping. Lake sat in her chair, clearly shell-shocked by the thoroughness of her dismantling. What had started as Lake's attempt to diminish Crockett with a personal attack had backfired spectacularly. Instead, Crockett had used the moment to showcase exactly why she had become such a powerful voice in Congress. Her preparation, her intelligence, her ability to think on her feet, and her complete command of the facts. The debate was effectively over. Lake would try to recover in the remaining minutes, but everyone in the studio knew that she had been completely outclassed. The viral moment had been created, and within hours, it would be viewed by millions of people around the world. The moment CNN went to commercial break, the digital world exploded. What had just happened between Jasmine Crockett and Kari Lake wasn't just a debate moment, It was a cultural earthquake that would reshape how people thought about both women and change the trajectory of their political careers forever. Before the commercial break even ended, Crockett Destroys Lake was already trending on Twitter. The platform's algorithm, designed to identify viral content, immediately flagged the clip as one of the fastest-spreading political videos of the year. The first viral tweet came from a Democratic strategist who had been watching live. "Holy shit, Jasmine Crockett just delivered the most devastating political takedown I've ever seen. She didn't just win that exchange, she ended Kari Lake's entire career." Crockett Destroys Lake within 5 minutes. The tweet had 50,000 retweets. Within an hour, it would reach 2.3 million. But it wasn't just Democrats sharing the clip. Political junkies from across the spectrum recognized that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. A prominent Republican consultant tweeted, "I disagree with Crockett on almost everything, but that was a masterclass in political combat." Lake walked into a buzzsaw. The clip spread beyond Twitter into every corner of social media. On TikTok, users began creating compilation videos set to dramatic music, splicing together Lake's confident attack with Crockett's devastating response. The sound of Crockett saying $89,000 Kari became an instant meme, with users applying it to everything from expensive coffee to luxury cars. Instagram exploded with reaction video. Political influencers, legal experts, and ordinary users all weighed in with their takes on what had just happened. Many focused on the broader implications of a black woman being attacked for her appearance, and then systematically destroying her attacker with facts and preparation. News organizations scrambled to analyze what had just happened. CNN itself immediately began producing segments breaking down the exchange. Their fact-checkers worked overtime to verify Crockett's claims about Lake's spending and voting record, and found that every single number was accurate. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow devoted her entire opening segment to the exchange the next night. "What we witnessed wasn't just a political debate," she said. "It was a demonstration of what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and when someone who has faced discrimination their entire career finally gets the chance to turn the tables on their attack." Even Fox News, despite their general alignment with Trump-supporting Republicans like Lake, struggled to defend what had happened. Several hosts acknowledged that Lake had made a serious tactical error by making the debate personal. "Look, I like Kari Lake," said one Fox News contributor, "but she walked into that one. You don't attack someone's appearance on national TV unless you're prepared for them to hit back twice as hard." CNN's Anderson Cooper, who had moderated the debate, appeared on several programs to discuss what he had witnessed. "In 30 years of journalism," he said, "I've never seen a more complete reversal of fortune in real time." Lake thought she was landing a knockout punch, and instead she gave Crockett the perfect setup for what might be the most effective political response I've ever seen. The immediate aftermath transformed Jasmine Crockett from a rising Democratic star into a national phenomenon. Her congressional office was flooded with interview requests from major networks, podcasts, and magazines. Speaking requests poured in from universities, legal organizations, and political groups across the country. Her social media following exploded overnight like a rocket ship. She gained over 400,000 new Twitter followers in just 24 hours, with her mentions flooded by supporters, celebrities, and political figures from around the world. Her Instagram account, which had been relatively modest with around 50,000 followers, suddenly had celebrities, major political figures, and influential activists sliding into her DMs with messages of support and collaboration requests. Hollywood stars who rarely engage with politics were sharing her clips and praising her intelligence and composure. More importantly for her political future, her stock within the Democratic Party leadership skyrocketed to unprecedented levels for someone so early in her congressional career. Party leaders who had seen her as just another promising young member now viewed her as potential presidential material, the kind of communicator who could take on anyone and win. Senior Democrats began floating her name for high-profile speaking slots at major events, primetime convention spots, and leadership positions typically reserved for much more senior members. Nancy Pelosi tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett showed the world tonight why representation matters. When you attack a brilliant black woman, you better come prepared for the consequences." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who had become famous for her own viral political moments, tweeted, "This is what happens when you underestimate a civil rights lawyer who's done her homework." Jasmine Foyos just gave a masterclass in preparation and precision. The clip became required viewing in political science classes, law schools, and communications programs. Professors used it to teach everything from debate strategy to the importance of research and preparation. While Crockett's star was rising, Kari Lake's political brand was collapsing in real time. The woman who had built her post-journalism career on being a fearless fighter suddenly looked unprepared and outmatched. Conservative commentators who had previously supported her began to distance themselves. "Kari Lake used to be a sharp interviewer," wrote one prominent right-wing blogger, "but she got completely schooled by someone who was better prepared and smart. That's not the kind of fighter we need representing our movement." The $89,000 figure that Crockett had cited became a massive liability. Investigative journalists dug deeper into Lake's campaign finances and found even more questionable spending on personal appearance expenses. Stories began emerging about her demands for specific lighting and makeup artists at political events, creating an image of someone more concerned with looking good than governing effectively. Lake's attempts to respond only made things worse. She went on friendly conservative podcasts trying to explain herself, but every explanation made her sound more out of touch. When she argued that her appearance expenses were necessary for television, hosts pointed out that other politicians managed to look professional without spending nearly as much. Her fundraising immediately took a hit. Major donors who had been considering supporting her future political ambitions began having second thoughts. She got destroyed by someone half her age. One Republican donor told Politico anonymously, "If she can't handle Jasmine Crockett, how is she going to handle real political pressure?" Beyond the immediate political implications, the exchange sparked a broader national conversation about how black women are treated in professional settings. The moment resonated far beyond politics, with women from corporate America, academia, and other fields sharing their own stories of having their appearance criticized while their qualifications were ignored. Legal organizations used the clip in diversity training programs, showing how Crockett had turned a discriminatory attack into a teaching moment about bias and double standards. Her response became a model for how to address workplace discrimination with facts and professionalism. Major magazines featured Crockett on their covers. Time magazine included her in their Next Generation Leaders issue. Essence magazine put her on the cover with the headline "The Moment That Changed Everything." Vogue profiled her style choices, ironically giving her exactly the kind of fashion coverage that Lake had criticized her for seeking. The exchange also highlighted the changing nature of political media. In previous eras, a moment like this might have been discussed for a few days and then forgotten. But in the age of social media, viral moments have staying power that can define careers and change political trajectories permanently. 6 months after the debate, the impact was still reverberating through American politics. Crockett had become one of the most sought-after Democratic surrogates, regularly appearing on major networks and headlining fundraising events across the country. Her effectiveness in the exchange had demonstrated something important to Democratic leadership: the power of having messengers who could match Republican aggression with superior preparation and intelligence. Party strategists began recruiting more candidates with similar backgrounds: lawyers, prosecutors, and other professionals who could think quickly under pressure. Lake, meanwhile, found her political options severely limited. Her planned Senate run in Arizona was quietly shelved after polling showed that the debate moment had damaged her favorability ratings even among Republican voters. She tried to reinvent herself as a media personality, but networks were reluctant to book someone who had been so thoroughly embarrassed on television. The exchange became a case study in political communications programs around the world. International observers noted how Crockett had used specifically American experiences, the intersection of race, gender, and politics, to create a moment that transcended typical political discourse. A year later, when political scientists and communications experts looked back at the most important media moments of the year, Crockett's response to Lake consistently ranked at the top. It wasn't just because of the viral nature of the clip, but because of how perfectly it encapsulated larger themes in American politics. The moment demonstrated the power of preparation over improvisation, substance over style, and intelligence over aggression. It showed how someone from a historically marginalized group could use their expertise and experience to completely flip the script on an attack. Most importantly, it proved that in the modern media environment, a single moment of authentic brilliance could overcome years of traditional political position. Crockett hadn't been a household name before that night, but her response to Lake's attack had made her one of the most recognizable and respected political voices in America. For aspiring politicians and communicators, the exchange became required study material. The lesson was clear: never underestimate your opponent, always do your homework, and remember that in the age of social media, every moment could be the moment that defines your entire career. The The clip of Jasmine Crockett dismantling Kari Lake continues to circulate on social media, serving as both entertainment and education. It remains a perfect example of what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and when someone who has faced discrimination their entire life finally gets the chance to show the world exactly what they're capable of. If this story of how Jasmine Crockett completely destroyed Kari Lake's attack showed you something new about the power of preparation and intelligence in politics, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We're covering all the biggest political moments and behind-the-scenes stories that the mainstream media won't tell you. Drop a comment below and let us know. Have you ever seen a more devastating political takedown than what Crockett did to Lake? And what do you think this moment means for the future of American politics? Don't forget to share this video with anyone who needs to see what real political skill looks like. We've got more explosive political content coming your way, so hit that notification bell and we'll see you in the next video, where we break down the latest political drama that has everyone talking.